Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we're learning how to guard our minds against all of the manipulations, attacks, and errors in thinking that happen to us every day here in the 21st century. Tonight, we are going to dig a little bit deeper into our ongoing discussion on normative narcissism and the wide-scale problems that accompany the creeping cultural acceptance of what was once considered a severe personality disorder. Recall from last week's video that normative narcissism may be thought of as a personality disorder that has become accepted as a social standard for people's behavior. This means that the traits of narcissistic personality disorder are becoming so ubiquitous that people have begun to see them less and less as problematic, harmful, and bad, but rather more and more as beneficial, desirable, and good. Now, there is quite a lot to be said about this trend, and we will attempt to address everything in the coming weeks. This video will be focused on the traits of narcissistic personality disorder and what sorts of psychological issues are likely to accompany those traits. In today's world, it's really common to hear people use terms like narcissistic or selfish, or even that person's an egomaniac in somewhat interchangeable ways. While this can serve to illustrate surface-level frustrations or to articulate personal feelings about how someone is treating us, we need to make sure that we understand the distinct differences and the ways in which each description of this harmful behavior actually occurs in people. As I've said before, when we speak about narcissism and narcissistic behavior, we are necessarily dealing with a specific set of traits that have been established within the medical field through testing and research. It's important that we not get these traits confused for the personality disorder itself, as that can have really bad implications. It can lead to false conclusions and potentially very harmful results when trying to think about and address these issues in ourselves and in our loved ones. As always, when thinking about this content, it's very important that we take time to consider our own lives and our own behavior, searching out these traits and all of the variations that may arise so that we can correct any harmful traits that we may have developed or are currently developing. This video may bring about some negative feelings if and when we do find some of these traits in our own behavior. Keep in mind that this is meant to encourage anyone watching towards potential and personal growth and the special kind of healing that really is only found through telling ourselves the truth about reality, no matter how that may make us feel. The truth does set us free, and we will be stronger when we understand as much as possible about some of the darker parts of ourselves. We're building up our armor that will help us keep our minds on guard. Since narcissism seems to be becoming normalized in today's world, we need to understand what is meant by the term narcissism. Last week, we said that narcissism is a personality disorder characterized by self-preoccupation, need for admiration, lack of empathy, and unconscious deficits in self-esteem. Now, this serves our understanding generally, but we want to know more. As with many things, this issue exists on a spectrum in people. One person may have a heightened level of self-preoccupation in one time through their life while not necessarily being constantly in need of admiration or lacking empathy. And let's face it, given certain circumstances and factors that may trigger our more emotional, irrational, and reactive behaviors, we all will fall into some kinds of these behaviors at some point in our lives. But does that mean that we qualify as diagnosable narcissists? When do we or any person move from simply having a bad day where we act selfishly to being fully personality disordered? The main way that psychoanalysts make the distinction regarding diagnosis is through evaluating people for a complex of congruent traits. Now, this means that in order for a person to be diagnosed as having narcissistic personality disorder, they must exhibit a specific number of traits at the same time. Traits are considered to be indicative of a person's normal day-to-day behavior, and as such, they have more weight regarding diagnosis than the possible mistake or screw-up in what would otherwise be typical in any person. Narcissists may exhibit any or all of the following traits. 1. A grandiose sense of self-importance. 2. Preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. 3. Belief that one is special and can only be understood by or associate with special people or institutions. 4. A need for excessive admiration. 5. A sense of entitlement to special treatment. 6. Exploitation of others. 7. A lack of empathy. 8. Envy of others or the belief that one is the object of envy. And 9. Arrogant, haughty behavior or attitudes. According to the DSM-5, which is the leading current literature used to diagnose personality disorders in people, a person must exhibit 5 of the 9 traits in order to be considered disordered. If this is the case, we can assume the person deals with quite a lot of issues in their life. And it's also likely that they are completely unaware of these issues, as their self-centered thinking and lack of empathy causes a fundamental disregard for their impact on the world around them. Often we see that this is masked by a fabricated sense of altruism and good intentions. What lurks just beneath the surface is really anything but that. As we look deeper into this, we will see that we are actually dealing with some of the most evil kinds of behavior that people can commit. Anyone who falls into the category of actually being a truly personality disordered narcissist is likely living their life with a baseline level of delusion that is pretty staggering when looked at with any objectivity. Now, I must state that I am no expert in this field in the clinical sense. I do not possess a degree in psychology, and I'm not a licensed psychotherapist. I do not intend to present this video in any professional context, nor is any of this meant to diagnose anyone watching or who may have this material shared with them. I have, however, gone through a considerable amount of lived experience, searching out my own areas of delusion and attempting to help others do the same. I have been guided through this process by highly capable and deeply loving individuals, and their knowledge base and help have provided me a path to be able to speak on these things here. While I was not ever far enough along in my own delusions and depravity to be considered personality disordered, I have dealt with and continue to navigate some level of all of these traits in my own life every day. When we think of delusions, an easy way to grasp the meaning that I intend here is that we lie to ourselves whenever we operate from any kind of delusion. It's a kind of break or split from reality. In narcissistic behavior, this is done as a defense mechanism that is designed to keep ourselves blind to our own faults, failures, mistakes, bad behavior, and sin. And just as importantly, to keep everyone else blind to those things as well. Most narcissistic behavior is born through trauma in childhood and is the result of patterning the behavior of parents who are themselves narcissistic or in some other way personality disordered. These defense mechanisms grow throughout our lives, and we feed their continued growth through ever more sophisticated methods of gaining narcissistic supply. Reading from Psychology Today, The term narcissistic supply originates in the psychoanalytic theory that concerns the essential needs of babies and toddlers to maintain their mental and emotional equilibrium. Narcissists' deficient self and inner resources make them dependent on other people to affirm their impaired self-esteem and fragile ego. They only validate themselves as reflected in the eyes of others. Despite their facade of confidence, boasting, and self-flattery, they crave attention, respect, and constant admiration, and actually fear that they are undesirable. This supply may be gained by any means necessary, and it's precisely that fact which opens up people who crave this supply to the whims and wills of some of the most manipulative and destructive forces in the world. We have discussed narcissistic supply in previous videos, but it will benefit us to refamiliarize ourselves with the concept so we can launch into coming videos with a clear picture of the kinds of danger that we're actually in when it comes to the normalization of narcissistic behavior. We've looked briefly at the work of Sigmund Freud on this subject. He noted that narcissists extract their supply from other people mainly by two pathways: aggression and ingratiation. To be admired and to get their supply, narcissists employ various strategies, including impression management. They ingratiate themselves using their charm, emotional intelligence, bragging, seduction, and manipulation. Receiving attention and admiration boosts their weak self and lack of self-esteem. They manipulate and try to control what others think in order to feel better about themselves, making narcissists dependent on recognition from others. If you refuse to provide what they want and need, they resort to their secondary means: aggression with narcissistic abuse. They go on the offensive attack and belittle you. Narcissists exclusively use others to get their supply, thus maintaining their emotional equilibrium. Because their sense of self is determined by what others think of them, narcissists use relationship for self-enhancement. Everyone must feed them. The main types of narcissistic supply are as follows: accomplishments and professional success, even if by cheating or using unethical means; financial gain by any means; status symbols such as a big home, a gold toilet, expensive car, 5-star dining in hotels; acquaintances with celebrities, public figures, and other high-status people and institutions; wearing designer labels and expensive accessories and jewelry; winning; using alcohol, drugs, or other addictions; sex, provoking arguments, emotional reactions, and chaos; receiving awards, attention in the news or social media; being admired and loved by romantic partners; having a mate that is desired by others, such as a trophy wife or influential or successful spouse; expressions of gratitude. It's pretty easy to see that these means of supply extraction are happening at all levels of media and culture today. The kinds of technology that have come online within the millennial generation have resulted in us becoming the most generally narcissistic generation that has ever lived. The data is still being gathered on Gen Z and the newest generation, Gen Alpha, but let's think for a moment: if millennials are the worst that we've ever seen, and this technology has only become more and more addictive, wide-reaching, and accepted, then what should we expect to see with respect to the behaviors of the younger generations as they grow into adulthood? The most troubling aspect is that a person who is reliant on the narcissistic supply that we just discussed is the most easily programmed person on the planet. If a controlling entity wishes to direct your thinking and behavior to adopt and then accept a paradigm, all they have to do is to manipulate you through the supply mechanisms, spike your dopamine, and boom, they have you hooked on whatever program they wish to run. It's exactly how cult leaders indoctrinate and manipulate their followers. What we must challenge ourselves to do is to work on identifying the ways in which we exhibit the traits of narcissism and do all that we can to set good, healthy boundaries in order to reverse the need for this infantile supply that we are inundated with throughout our daily lives. Through honesty and submission to the truth of our own defective, sinful thinking, we can begin to build up skills and thinking systems which actually align with reality, and then begin to plant our feet in foundations that are concrete and provide the sure footing to live our lives free from the manipulations and addictions that hunt us at all hours of the day. For those of you that have been watching these videos who live in health and are free from these issues, then praise God for His provision of truth and love. I hope that you can use your skills to help others grow out of this. Until next week, please stay diligent and stay vigilant, keeping your minds on guard.